Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well this week. So to start off, I think my biggest takeaways from this week's readings were kind of like group and like social dynamics, and what kind of influences a group. Um, I think the biggest pieces for me were like sharing a common task and like interacting face to face, and that's like the main drivers of like a good functioning group. And then what else I thought was really interesting was the implicit and explicit norms, and how those influence a group, whether people realize it or not. And I think I found most interest in the ones where like the norms that aren't like verbally spoken, and how those kind of form. And I think that's like very intriguing. And I would kind of like to know more about like how those norms end up forming, especially for ones where it's like, oh, like everybody shows up like late, and kind of like how that those norms form. Not necessarily like the less complex ones, like oh, like be respectful when someone else is talking, like when someone else is talking, be quiet. But like maybe a little bit the more like complex ones that aren't maybe seen as norms like everywhere. Um, I think what I really want to get out of this course regarding my capstone project is researching sexual violence or sexual assault in recreation. And I'm working alongside Kate Evans with that, and like kind of doing using some of her previous work that I helped out with. So I think ideally where I want to focus on is like kind of like these within these like social dynamics, and like what influences that, like are those, is like sexual assault somewhat of a norm? I mean, like at least thinking about it in like my aspect, like back in like the 80s, like it was very much more common that like sexual assault and harassment was like happening in the workplace more than it is now. But it is still like happening now, and it is still an issue. So kind of like what social dynamics and norms kind of play into that. Um, and then I think in terms of like my professional service, especially with what we like talked about today, um, I really want to, like, one of my big passions is like the camp industry. So I think, yeah, from this week's reading, like with group dynamics, I really want to focus on like how those like social formations really affect not only our campers but our staff. So I think that leads me to like the age group I want to focus on is youth, young adults, and adults. Mostly, I know that's like pretty big, but like typically like around like the 6 years old to like 20, mid 20s about. Just because that's like typical for the campers we serve, and the staff that typically work. Um, and then, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Zach. I think my big main passions are, in terms of recreation, are the outdoor camping industry and events and hosting and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think overall I just kind of want to learn about how social dynamics truly like influence rec and what we do to use that information to better facilitate. Yeah.